Hello everybody, welcome back to Solving Standard. I'm Corbin Hostler and this is white-green tokens. So first off, I want to give a shout out to Max from my hometown who won a PPTQ with this deck. So I started looking into it more and I found some lists online that have been 5-0ing some daily events as well. Now this is pretty outside the range of the standard decks you hear about. This isn't your Grixis Good Stuff decks, it's not an energy deck, it's not an approach deck, a token deck exactly. It's really just its own sort of thing, which is pretty cool in standard right now because standard has a lot of viable archetypes. And when this comes out, I guess I will be on my way to Grand Prix Memphis to cover standard for Wizards. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see where things go after the event. But I will be on the lookout for this deck. So let's break down green-white tokens. Starts off, well, green-white aggro tokens, you know, whatever we're talking about here. But it starts off with Legion Landing. Makes a 1-drop lifelink vampire pretty good and can transform pretty fast because you can go Legion's Landing into turn 2, Servo Exhibition, make 2 tokens on turn 3, flip your Legion's Landing. So we have Sacred Cat here. Just this basically you get a couple flex spots in the deck, and this is a good one. You hedge a little bit against mono red, make some chump blockers, pretty decent card all around. Blossoming Defense, protect your creatures. Now we get into those creatures. So Danto Vanguard is just an extremely powerful card. In standard, it attacks as a 3/1. You can pay for life to make it indestructible. And thanks to the Legion's Landing and other, things this deck has going on, you can gain some life. Adorned Pouncer. Double strike card. Pretty good when you pump it. And also comes back as a 4/4 double striker late in the game. The Servo Exhibitions I mentioned to create more tokens. Merfolk Branchwalker. This has sort of become just the value go-to 2-drop in standard right now. Just sometimes it's a 3/2. Sometimes draws you a card. Just all around decent card. And similarly, Jade Light Ranger, Merfolk shout out here, is the same at the 3-drop spot, which is a generically good card in a bunch of different decks. This deck, green-black decks, red-green monsters, and so on. But now we get to what really makes this deck unique. And we're talking about Appeal to Authority. Front side, 1-mana sorcery. Until end of turn, target creature gets trample and +X/+X with a number of creature you control. Authority, cast from your graveyard. Tap up 2 target creatures your opponents control. Creatures you control gain vigilance until end of turn. 4 of these in this deck. Now, when you go Legion's Landing into Servo Exhibition, into Jade Light Ranger, into what have you, and then you appeal for Authority on turn 3 or 4 or 5, it makes some pretty big creatures that are busting in there, and they're going to have trample as well. Now, at the top end, you have one of my favorite cards in Standard, SRAM's Expertise. Create 3 servos and cast a card with converted cost 3 or less. So you can make 3 servos and then cast an Appeal to Authority off of the SRAM's Expertise and use the appeal to pump one of the creatures you already have and attack for a ton. Oketra the True, another god making its appearance in Standard. It's no Scarab God, it's no Hazaret, but it's not even a Ronus, but it is pretty good in this deck. 3/6, double strike indestructible. It can't attack or block unless you control 3 or other creatures. Sorry, can't. At least 3 other creatures, which you will certainly do in this deck. And you can create some white warrior creature tokens with vigilance in the long game. Now, Huatli. This is a fun one, and this isn't in all the lists, but it's in some of them. So I want to play it, just because why not? 4 mana, 3 loyalty planeswalker, +1. Put a loyalty counter on it for each creature you control. Well, that's going to be 3 or 4 loyalty counters when you play this thing on turn 4 or 5. -1, target creature gets +X, where X is the number of creatures you control. -8, you get an emblem that whenever a creature enters battlefield under your control, you draw a card. Now, that's not non-token creature, it's any creature. So, and it's really not hard to have 5 creatures on the battlefield and play Huatli and plus this thing up to 8, minus it, and then just draw cards for days. Realistically, that's the deck. We have 4 Shephet Dunes in the deck to pump all of our tokens. We have a Hash-Up Oasis as well. The deck is just full of value. It will just swarm the board, grind out your opponents. We have the Baffling End in here because, like I said, you get a few flex spots. You can go a few cats, a few Baffling Ends, what have you. But this is sort of the hedge in the middle. This deck's going to flood the board. It's going to pump some creatures, and it's going to be quite a bit of fun. Now, moving on to the sideboard. Kind of just a hodgepodge here. You know, you have the Sunscourge Champions for the red matchup, Baffling End for the black-green matchup, Fragmentize when you need to destroy some artifacts or enchantments, Ixalan's Binding for the Scarab God. Settle the Wreckage is a nice one in either the Mirror or, I mean, the Mirror is probably not a thing, but the blue-black mid-range decks, the green-black decks, maybe even the token decks that really want to swarm the board, red-green monsters, you can settle their wreckage, and it's always going to be unexpected. Nissa Vital Force for the control matchups, bring it in. It's pretty strong on its own. Harvester for red and Carnage Tyrant for control. That is green-white aggro, everybody. It won a PPTQ at home, and that's pretty awesome, and that got my attention onto it. And then I looked, and it turns out this is a deck. This is a deck you could see at a Grand Prix, and it's a deck that could do well because it's been having success online. So let's solve it. Thanks for watching, everybody.